Don't self-medicate with fragments of silicon.
Welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. Let's get to the news. Twilight, why don't you start us off this week?
All right. Well, yeah, it's been kind of sweltering here for the past few days. Though thankfully there's chances of rain tomorrow and Friday, so I'll be welcoming that. But that's I've been able to stay comfortable with my air conditioner with using it sparingly. Another 15 minutes and I'll be just fine. um. I didn't necessarily celebrate the 4th of July Saturday, but being it's my first year in this neighborhood, I got to experience what could be compared to a war zone that night. Yeah, everybody in all four directions was just setting off fireworks, everything from Roman candles to, I don't know, big fireworks, I guess you could describe them as. And but they were nothing compared to the city fireworks that fired off at about, I think it was 9, I believe, was when they started. First time I've seen those in years. Me and my family used to come down here and see them all the time when I was a kid, but weather got in the way for about 3 years, and we just kind of gave up on that and got our own fireworks. It was fun to see them again. Um, let's see now. Work's been fine. Been playing games, and that's about it.
All right, let me see. Hetty, you're up.
It's hot. It's effing hot. But we're supposed to have a big thunderstorm roll through tonight, so hopefully, as long as we don't lose power and internet again, it'll cool down.
Mm.
As far as kind of personal stuff, I'm still waiting to get new computer parts since because of the pandemic thing. Right now is not the best time to be looking for computer parts because everything's really, really expensive. So I've been saving some money from my check. And I did get myself a couple games, though. I got Persona 5 Royal, Team Sonic Racing, and Mortal Kombat 11 Aftermath. So yeah, that was a thing because GameStop was doing a buy two get one free promotion, so I figured why not. And yeah, I'm still waiting to hear back on getting on my new glasses coming in. If I don't hear anything by the end of the week, I'm probably gonna end up calling them. Because they said mine should have only taken about a week. And yeah, I guess that's it on my news. So next victim.
You going, Lick?
Did you say me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Temperature's still been up and down here, though the humidity's been very high. Although that's partly because I live pretty close to the ocean. But we had thunderstorms earlier tonight, but thankfully that seems to have quieted down because it always sucks when that happens in the middle of a show. Otherwise, I really don't feel like a whole lot's been going on.
I mean, that's pretty much the story week to week, given, like COVID.
The summer of blah.
Yeah, it's been nice to be able to do Pathfinder in person again with my friends. I've been bringing a mask to wear when I'm not sitting down, and they arrange the tables to be far enough apart that it feels safe. So that's been nice, I guess. But otherwise, not much has really changed, and I haven't really gotten much new in the way of video games either, aside from the ones for review.
Right.
Although I didn't know this when the Steam sale ended, and I was hoping to be able to use the paycheck that I'm supposed to get on Friday on it, but I guess it ends before then, so I may see if there's anything I want.
All right. So, I guess it's my go. Let's see. Yeah, like it's summertime here, so I mean, naturally it's hot, but what summertime means in Florida is also the rainy season. So, a lot of summer showers, a lot of rain, a lot of fucking humidity. Like, terrible, terrible humidity. Like, just the worst.
Humanity sucks.
Yes.
Film at 11.
Right. Sure, why not? Let's see. Mac's still alive, although I don't think his Indiegogo campaign has gained any traction the past couple weeks. No.
I think it's got like a little bit, but not much.
Yeah. I'm not surprised given how badly his last one went. Like, this one is going a little better in the fact that it's up to a certain guaranteed pledge level, but still, it's like I think he needs to rethink things, because clearly the current approach isn't really working. But it's just a whole bunch of bereavement of things. Granted,
I'd like for us to be able to promote it more, but he doesn't really give us that much to promote with, so.
No, yeah, among other things, like, I don't think anyone has any confidence in it. Like, and why would they, given, the last one bombed so badly? That's just the facts what happened. So, anyway, ordered some new masks because the old one got torn. That's been fun. Especially since apparently there's a local ordinance requiring masks, but I've seen that applied inconsistently. That is to say,
well, there's one thing to have a local ordinance, and another thing to have people like follow the local ordinance.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm referring to. It's like the corner convenience store requires masks. The Wawa does not, for example. Like,
and there might be some store out there that's still saying they require no masks.
Yeah, Walmart's a bit odd because they don't require masks, but I'm like, they're like you gotta wait in line to get in and shit like that.
Yeah,
it is weird.
That's what they do over here too.
Like, I mean, they even putting like new gates and shit to enforce that. I'm guessing that's a company-wide thing.
Yeah,
seems so.
Yeah. I mean, picked up some stuff for the Steam sales, some of it for the show, some of it not.
some of it to live in your Steam library till the end of time.
More or less. It's like, whenever I get around to, say, Lego Batman 3. Granted, that's a thing that existed on my wish list for about 6 years, so it's all about whenever the impulse comes. Anyway, so on that note, merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is Emmanuel Floret of Pixel Racers.
Hey everyone, pleased to be here.
That's good to have you. Good to have you. How are you doing tonight?
Great, actually, it's not that hot here, but it's hot, but not as hot as in Florida here in Quebec. So it's good,
Right.
man. Nice temperature, chilling out. Great day.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. Right. So how we like to get started is to get to know the person behind the games, the studio, and so on and so forth. We like to ask them, what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Okay. Well, I think that my sister is a big part of that because she got a Game Boy when we were young. She had like 8 years old, and I was 5, something like that. And yeah, I believe I played my first memory of playing video games is actually Tetris on the Game Boy around 1990, something like that. And I found that cool. And then she came back at some point someday with Link's Awakening, The Legend of Zelda, and that just blew my mind. And from here, it was my thing. I was like, video games are awesome. That's my thing. But I didn't expect to have a career about that when I was younger. And so I went to do advertising in my studies, graduated, created an advertisement company. And then at some point I was kind of like tired of doing advertising. It wasn't really for me, and I was tired of living in France, actually, because I'm French also. And so I wanted to do something else. And some of my friends that were living in Montreal, which whom I've studied with in the United States, poked me like, "Hey, what you doing? Just come to Montreal and have fun, And I'm not that of a winter guy, Like I'm half Caribbean, so I prefer sunshine and beaches, But I was like, okay, let's try it, And when I started looking stuff about Montreal, I just realized that it was like that big place for video games, and I was like, hey, maybe it's my opportunity. Maybe I can start working in the industry, if I go live there. So I came to Montreal, sorry, and just with like my suitcase, 25 kilos with just basic stuff, and I didn't think I was gonna stay for that long. And I've applied to THQ Montreal at the time to be a QA tester because I didn't want, to go in the industry as an advertiser or marketing guy or something like that. I wanted to be more on the development side. So yeah, I've applied as a QA tester, and from there everything started. It was back in 2011.
Oh wow! So how did you find QA?
Extremely interesting. Since it was my first experience in the industry, I had everything to learn, and the best way to learn how to do stuff is to break stuff, actually. So I've learned how to break the games and how to start working, with the processes of the industry and the tools and stuff, and it was amazing, man. Great time for me. The people at THQ were awesome, and a lot of talented people. So I really learned a lot. And QA is, I believe, one of the best schools that you can go to if you want to enter the industry, in a development capacity, at least.
Gotta admit, like, we don't get that many people who started from the QA branch. Like, not unprecedented, but far less than, say, like, computer programmer switched over to video games kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, how long were you at THQ Montreal?
Actually, just 6 months, because so so they hired me, and I did a great job, and everybody was happy. But shit hits the fan at something like 4 months after I came in, because of the huge road tablet 2 That was a huge flop. And so yeah, they ran out of money, and so they were like, yeah, we kind of have to let go pretty much everyone, and so they let me go. And at that point, I have like I've been in Quebec for 6 months. My visa was ending 6 months after that. I had no job, basically with no warning. Like from the one day to the next, it's like, okay, you have nothing. I was like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? And I found a job at a outsourcing lab called VMC, and I was doing French and English localization over there for 3 months. And then a friend with whom I've worked at THQ was hired by Ubisoft Montreal, and he referred me. He told them that, yeah, this guy, he's okay. Should probably get him. So the Ubisoft called me basically when I was working at VMC, and it was okay at VMC, but it's an outsourcing lab, so it wasn't like the THQ standard, like no 5 to 7 and beers on Fridays and stuff.
Right.
And so when Ubisoft called me, I was like, yeah, I'll be right here. So I just dumped my job at VMC and ran straight to Ubisoft Montreal, and it was awesome, man.
Not a surprise that you ended up at Ubisoft. We've had quite a few people from the Montreal area who have been in Ubisoft capacity at one point or another. They're a large employer in the area. Yeah. So,
Exactly.
but so did you do QA at Ubisoft?
Yep. Actually, I started kind of like half a graduation, because I wasn't an FQA, functional QA, longer. I was a dev QA, which means I was sitting with the devs and near the game designers and the programmers and the artists. So at that point, the learning curve just went exponential, because I was sitting inside the production. I wasn't just testing builds that were sent from Austin, Texas, or wherever. So I've actually tested for Ubisoft for 2 years, and during those 2 years, I just worked my ass off, proved to everyone that I was capable of doing more than just testing the games, and I was very interested in game design, and so I just showed them that I could be a game designer. So I took all the formations, and I did all the overtime and all the documentation that is not that useful, but just shows that you're smart and you can do it. and yeah, basically after 2 years, they were like, yeah, okay, let's have a try, and they put me on the Mighty Quest for Epic Loot game design team as a junior, and I learned everything there.
Oh wow! And how much of a shift was moving from QA to actual game design?
It was I was ecstatic, because basically I went from in like 3 years or something, I went from I leave France with my suitcase and I don't know what I'm gonna do, to, oh my god, I'm a game designer at freaking Ubisoft Montreal. So
Right.
it was absolutely crazy. On a professional capacity level, it was like kind of felt natural, because I left my colleagues in the QA department and I just sat like 10 meters away from them, and basically that was it. And instead of just running the tests with them, I was designing features and talking with them on how to run the test and how the features work and stuff like that. So it was like pretty much a continuity. And Ubisoft they are very gentle, they're very, very patient, and they know that it takes time, and they're great guys, basically.
Right. And I'm not sure if you can talk about this, but what did you end up designing at Ubisoft?
So I was on the Mighty Quest for Epic Loot team, which wasn't the most successful Ubisoft franchise, I have to say. But it was funny. My job, basically, I was like kind of the balancing guy. So yeah, a lot of Excel work, a lot of testing, basically, because my strength, since I tested the game for 2 years before being a game designer, is that I knew the game, from inside out, and how you have to play every class, and how to place those monsters and those traps, and do the best combos. And I was talking a lot on the forums with all the players and stuff. So it was kind of natural that they gave me the balancing part, because I knew the meta and I knew how the game was played in a lot of detail. And I did also some creatures and bosses and abilities for the heroes. And yeah, basically just like small features. Like no, since I was a junior, I didn't have like the whole shop to redesign or stuff like that. It was basically just the entry level stuff.
That makes sense, given a first project type of deal.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, was the Epic Quest for the Mighty Quest for Epic Loot? Yeah, was that the only game you worked on at Ubisoft?
Well, no, because at some point that game kind of flopped, kind of. So we had to find another project, and my creative director at the time, Hervé Sliwa, just we had a great relationship together, and he was a big mentor for me. And basically, he was given a new project, which was like a high tech, next gen, groundbreaking in 2015. It was a VR project. And he said, "Hey, Emmanuel, you want to come with me on that, that new adventure?" And I'm like, "Sure, VR looks cool. Never tried it before." And so I worked on a VR prototype project for a year and a half as actually the only designer for quite some time. And it was awesome, man. Like we did stuff in VR with that game that if it had shipped would have been very, very like innovative. But at that point, nearing the end of this period, I realized that I wasn't that much happy with the whole AAA 9 to 5. I'm saying it with a like um, between I'm sorry, I forgot the word, but it's not 9 to 5 at Ubisoft. But anyway, it's still like 40 plus hours a week and stuff. I wasn't happy with that lifestyle. I went to a place in Quebec, a cabin near a lake, and I was like, oh my god, what am I doing? Waking up every day, taking the subway, the metro, to go to work and come back late and have no time to do this and think about the world and look at the stars. And oh, by the way, there's no stars because I'm in Montreal and it's the big city and stuff. And so I had to have a plan, to move on. And that's where I found the idea for my first game, SBK Team Manager, and then I pretty much made everything so I could go on with my own studio, leave Ubisoft in very good terms because I really love those guys. And then I went on with my life and with Pixel Racers from there. That was in 2016, October 2016.
Yeah, it makes sense to me because we've heard stories, and you're not the first, person who worked in AAA and who wanted to move to indies for one reason or another. I mean, not necessarily like time parameters because, well, to put it bluntly, like working on an indie game is time consuming in its own right.
Mm-hmm. But you can do it with your own terms, on your own terms.
True enough. True enough, which is a big reason why people do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think you mentioned SBK there.
Yep.
That's Superbike, right?
Yeah, SBK. Nice.
Yeah, I've seen the initials before. Like, I don't know too much about Superbike, the sport, but I know what SBK stands for.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. Like, what Superbike project did you work on in between, Ubisoft and Pixel Racers?
Well, SBK Team Manager was the first project of Pixel Racers. It was the reason why I left Ubisoft. Mm-hmm. So I had to find an idea to leave Ubisoft so I can create my own studio and stuff. And one day I had a discussion with my great friend Félix Gauthier-Grandbois, with whom I design a lot of stuff, and we do all the game jams together. He's my design buddy basically, and he's still at Ubisoft. He's a level designer on the Watch Dogs Legion. Mm-hmm. And we had this discussion. He was like, okay, so what's the game you want to do before you die, or the game you want to play before you die? And I've always been in bikes since I'm 13 years old, riding bikes, like pretty aggressively. Back in France, had beat bikes, went really fast. big passion about motorcycle competition, MotoGP, SBK, and stuff. And I was like, you know what? I love management games, and I don't think there's a management game where you manage a motorcycle team, you know. And so I'd like to do this game. And so we discussed a little bit longer, and then he went back home, and I was like, you know what? That's not a crazy idea. So I went into research on the spot, and indeed there was no motorcycle team management simulation game. And so for me, it was like a blue ocean, you know. It's like, okay, that's the way out. Let's do this. It's my passion project. I love motorcycles. I love management games. It's something that I can do. I'll be like the best dude in the world to make this game, you know. And so I started working on it basically. And so it was Pixel Racer's first project. So I left Ubisoft in October 2016 after having negotiated with them. Negotiated is it's probably not the best word, but you know, when you work for Ubisoft, you kind of have to tell them what you're working on in case they're interested. They have the first right, you know, to get your game basically. And so so I showed them the game. It wasn't really in the Ubisoft portfolio, you know, to have a sport management game. And so I left Ubisoft, found some investors, a lot of crazy stuff, you know, everything that comes with a first indie project. And the game at the beginning didn't have the SBK license, of course, because it was a small indie game. And I managed to find a publisher called Digital Tales at the GDC in 2018 or 17, I believe 17. And they had the rights to the SBK license. And it was like the dream for me, because I remember playing the SBK 2001 game when I had like 16 years old, you know, with my friends. I was like, oh my God, you know, it would be so cool if we could do an SBK game someday. And here I am, you know, doing an SBK game with the license and stuff. And so, yeah, and I released that game on November 2018 with all my team at the time. And the game just absolutely flopped, man. And from one day to another, I couldn't pay my rent, and I couldn't pay my programmer and stuff, and it was a big mess. So that's the story about SBK Team Manager, kind of.
That's a disappointing end to the story.
Yeah, kind of. But I've bounced back since then. So I'm not sure if I have to continue here or if you have another question. Maybe I'll let you ask a question.
Well, I mean, independent of how the game sold, are you proud of the end product? Like, is this a game that you're proud that you made?
I can't say I'm 100% happy and proud of that game, because we had some issues, you know, during, especially with the. I'm not sure I can talk about that. So let's just say that the publishing deal didn't went as expected.
Noted. Well, once again, it's a shame that didn't pan out, but it's good that you managed to persevere to, well, your second, and I'm presuming your latest game?
Exactly. And this one, so Vetrix, my second game, exactly. So this one has a great story, because indeed, at that point in early 2017, I had no money to pay my rent and stuff, and I had basically two solutions. It was three solutions. Or I just give up, or I go back, let's say, to Ubisoft, because I'm pretty sure they'll take me back because we love each other. And but I would have way less time to work on new games for Pixel Racers, and it will again be a mess, because I have to go through the Ubisoft loops each time I want to create a new game. Or basically, I had to find a way to live without a rent. And so I was like, okay, let's try to live without a rent. So I sold and gave 80% of my stuff, which wasn't much, because, you know, as an indie developer, you're not rich. So I didn't have like a jacuzzi and stuff, you know. But so I gave all my stuff, sold all my stuff, put everything I had in my car. And I'm like, you know, as long as I have my laptop, my brain, and an internet connection, I can make games, you know. And so basically, I started the nomad life this way, making games on the road, man. and a lot of adventures later, and after having moved all the way around Quebec for more than a year, and basically a year and a half now, I found the way to create a VR game in the meantime, which is Vetrix. And that game I'm definitely very, very proud of.
That's good. That's good to hear. Like, And how did you come across the idea of, well, for those who aren't watching the footage, um, basically Tetris for the Game Boy, but in VR, sort of. Hello?
So, yep. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's like my network just switched for some reason. Let me switch back.
Okay. Um, dangers of doing a live show. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but give a minute.
I think I'm back. Am I back?
Yep.
Yes. Yes. Anyway.
Yes. Sorry, the network automatically switched. Sorry. So yeah, basically at that point when I had to, I had basically to do another game because I was like traveling around and working on some prototypes, but I needed to make money because the sales of SBKT Manager were starting to dwindle hard, and it wasn't really much. And so I had to find an idea. And at some point, I had a discussion with people from Trebuchet, which is another indie video game studio in Montreal. And they were like, yeah, we're making a VR location-based games, like for VR arcades. And, the market is okay and stuff. And at that point, I was like, I worked in VR at Ubisoft for a year and a half. And I believe that for me, as solo developer, it could work, if I make a game quickly enough. That's interesting. I don't need a lot of money to live, basically something like 400 or 500 Canadian dollars per month. So let's try this, So I called my mom and I said, Mom, can you please invest $500 for me to get an Oculus Rift? Got the Rift, and at that point I had to find a game idea. And I called my ex-artist, which is my actual artist now, but he couldn't work with me at that time because I had no money, just to pitch around, And he was pitching a lot of stuff that was very, very complicated for me to do on my own. And at some point I said, Johan, that's too complicated because I'm not a programmer. So the whole game is made in Playmaker, the whole game. And I'm like, Johan, that's too complicated for me. We have to keep it simple. It's just think like Tetris in VR, scope wise. And it hit me, when I said that. I'm like, hey, I think that's a good idea. And I went on the stores and have a look at all the like Tetris-like games that were there. And none of those games were like sexy enough for me. Every time I was like, I think I can do better than that, And so the idea came like this, basically.
So was this before the Tetris Effect got released?
No, that was after. And when I saw Tetris Effect, I was like, okay, that's awesome job, guys. But for me, it wasn't utilizing the assets and the USP of the VR, because a good VR game basically is like your body is the controller. Mm-hmm. And Tetris Effect wasn't using that to its maximum potential. So I was like, I'm going to do something different that really uses the grab and your geometry in space and proprioception, skills like you want to do, in VR.
Was that a complicated affair, given all the geometry involved?
Yeah, mostly because I'm not a programmer. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on Playmaker trying to make it work and make it feel good and snappy and no bugs and stuff. So it was a challenge for me, but in the end, it's not physics based and stuff, So I could manage.
Indeed. And how long did it take you to assemble Vectrex here?
So and that's where I come with the time the time stuff that we were talking about with Ubisoft and the 40 hours a week. Basically, it took 4 months, but at some points I was like working like 50 hours a day for 2 weeks, and then for 2 weeks after I just didn't work. It was totally on my rhythm. So I probably could have done it like if I worked regularly 40 hours a week in like 2 months, I guess. But it took 4 because I took it in a more relaxed way. The reason also why I'm a nomad and stuff is like I just want to have enough time to enjoy my life and basically go do kayak and walk in the forest and learn new instruments and stuff. So yeah, I did it slowly, and I believe all my games are going to be made on that model from now. No more overtime rushing 80 hours a week and stuff like that. That's the past.
Well, if you can help it, like it's
Yeah.
like how well has Vectrex done since it's been released?
Well, it's okay. It's okay. Should I be transparent on that? I don't know how the other people do, but basically, I've sold something like 200 units on all the stores. So it's not that much. I believe the game has the potential to sell more because it's a very, user-friendly, VR entry-friendly game. Uh, Cheap also. With love inside because as you can see, everything's Game Boy and stuff. I really, really like put all the memories of my first encounter with video games with Tetris and I was young inside that game. So I believe with more marketing coverage, it probably could do better. But unfortunately, I don't have the budget for that at the moment.
Understandable given the circumstances. Although, in terms of like getting Vectrex onto other platforms, how likely would this game be for the PlayStation VR?
Well, a lot of people ask me about that, about VR, PlayStation VR port and an Oculus Quest port. The issue here is since I did this game in Playmaker and stuff, and I'm not a programmer, now that I have an official programmer, which is a friend that I met at Ubisoft Montreal like 9 years ago, and now we are working together. It's like, should we try to port that Playmaker made game on PSVR, or should we wait for Vectrex 2? Because that game was made, out of necessity and passion and stuff, but I I couldn't hold it too long because I needed the money to live. So I shipped it without any like progression system and with only 2 game modes. And the art is okay, but it could be better with more like dithering effects and stuff like that. So we're probably thinking that the best way to go will be to let Vectrex live the first one its life and then do Vectrex 2 with proper code and more and easier to port to all the platforms.
Okay. Um, and is Vectrex 2 in active development?
No. For the moment, we are working on a new project that I'm pretty excited about, I have to say, but it's not announced yet. But it's very innovative, and it's going to be great fun, I believe.
Okay. Well, can't really ask anything else about that. So now, in terms of like the actual Vectrex game, um, is it what you see, what you get with the trailer here? Like, is it just stacking the blocks and hoping for line drops, or is there more to see that isn't in the trailer?
Not much, actually. So yeah, basically the catch is that you have 2 rows instead of one, and that you have one shape out of the shapes that you have to play. That's gonna take anyway like a Z space. So it's gonna take the both lines in depth. So you have to place this shape anyway, and you have bonus blocks, which are blocks that spawn, and if you complete a line and there's a block inside that line, it's going to give you like more time or more score. So that's why it plays a little bit also different than Tetris. It's because you want to get those bonus blocks quickly, so you have to play on the top of the puzzle. Since there's no gravity, you can go get a line at the top of the puzzle. It won't fall down, if you know what I mean. So yeah, and we have 2 game modes. The score mode, which is like you have 300 seconds to have the best score possible, and we have leaderboards, online leaderboards. And we have the time mode, which is you have to reach 200,000 points, in the shortest time possible. And basically that's it. So that's why the price of the game also is kind of low. It's like $6 because there's not much to it. It's really, and I wanted it this way because it's all it's all the Game Boy package. There's only like 3 songs in the game, and there's only 2 modes, and there's only this because it's supposed to be like a Game Boy game in VR, so not that much content. So that's why also I didn't add more and more and more. I didn't feature creep.
Well, that's good, given the precariousness of your situation. And it's like, but I suppose along those lines, what do you hope to include in Vectrix 2?
Okay, so definitely a progression system, for a better like single player, a more fleshed out single player experience. So you have multiple levels with different puzzles and different challenges to complete. So that's on one side of the game. I'd like to also add an endless mode where you can just play with no pressure and stuff, and that would be easy. I could maybe add it for this version of Vectrix. I'm currently thinking about that, and we definitely want to have multiplayer for the next one because we believe that it would be great, to be able to fight on Vectrix with your friends. So yeah, that would be nice. Better art, more colors because you can switch color teams. So better creativity on that aspect. So yeah, basically it will be like the Vectrix definitive edition.
Yeah, all that sounds sensible, especially multiplayer. Given how big a feature that was for the original Game Boy Tetris.
Could we play? Oh yeah, with the cable link.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, yeah, that's true. With the cable link. Oh my god.
It was
Yeah,
one of the very
definitely.
few reasons to actually have a link cable before Pokemon came out.
Yeah,
And then
that's what I
Pokemon
was
came
about to
out.
say. Exactly, because I bought mine just for Pokemon, and so I didn't think about all the other games. It was just for Pokemon.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, multiplayer. The thing is, with multiplayer and VR, it's like, I think now it's okay, but there's not that huge player base. So it's kind of hard to find matches online and stuff. But for a 1v1 game like Vectrix 2, it should be okay.
Right. I mean, I suppose that depends on what you would want to do with the multiplayer. Like, if you want to go the full falling, like have some way to have garbage blocks in there, versus just doing it like you have on in Vectrix 1. So like I don't know how complicated that would be, but I'm just remembering how like the original Game Boy Tetris was.
Yeah, and we have some great example like Puzzle Fighter as well. There's a lot of good inspiration to draw from. So I'll see at the time. For the moment, I know that I'd like to have just the classic mode like Vectrix. So basically score attack with your friend, and yeah, a multiplayer mode where there's more like fighting, so garbage blocks or stuff like that, bonus that you can use, power ups. Yeah, we'll get more creative with that also.
Yeah. Now, in terms of VR compatibility, is it do you have to have like an Oculus Rift, or is there any sort of preference in terms of VR headset?
You can have any tethered headset that is 6 degrees of freedom, meaning that it's like all the Oculus Rift and Rift S, HTC Vive, Vive Cosmo, Valve Index, all the Windows mixed reality headset like the Samsung Odyssey, and all those headsets that are compatible like basically on Steam. The only compatibility we are missing basically it's like the standalone headsets like the Oculus Quest, and also the PSVR, of course. But if not, if you have a tethered VR headset on PC and you have Steam, it should be okay. If not, please let me know.
Indeed. And does that support also include the different computer platforms? Like, is this game Mac and Linux compatible?
Mac, I would doubt that. Honestly, Linux maybe might work, but Mac, yeah, I really have some doubts about that.
Duly noted. Right, and let's see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you.
I think I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah, I think I piped in when I had anything.
Okay. Right. So I think that's about it. Emmanuel, thank you for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here tonight.
Thank you so much, guys. Really, it's my pleasure.
No problem. No problem. Anyway, the game is Vetrix. It's currently available on Steam and the Oculus Store. It is retailing for $5.99 USD. So if you have a compatible VR device, be sure to pick it up today. All right, Petty, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion. So, there's a bit of a sticky wicket coming up with a topic this week because fuck all is happening right now. Granted, there are some movements that could be big that are going on right now, but those are in potentiality, let's say. And maybe I'll get into that next week. But for this week, we are talking about Epic Games. Now, we've talked about Epic Games in quite a few capacities here on the show. We've talked about Unreal Engine. We talked about Unreal Engine 5 recently. We talked about the Epic Games Store. Seriously, how the fuck do they not have a shopping cart still?
Still?
It genuinely irks me that, the Fortnite company cannot get basic online commerce right. But, once again, we've talked about this. Fortnite itself, no one here is really a Fortnite player, nor is anyone here 15 years old. So we are not obligated to give a shit about Fortnite. But it's the nice thing when you don't have to be hip with the times. You can play the games you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're talking about Epic Games or Epic Mega Games in the historical context because, yeah, they are much more than just the Fortnite people or the Unreal Engine people. They've got a very long history, spanning to about 1990, if I'm remembering correctly. And they were a big player on the shareware scene, which is probably something I'm going to have to explain because
shareware. I remember that thing.
Yeah,
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's been that long.
Once upon a time, back in the day, video games came on like disc cassettes or CDs instead of on like just digital downloads. And
The magic internet tunnels
for PC games. Which, yes, they do still sell PC games physical, but you know what I mean.
No. You brought up CDs. No. We're talking like even the times before that.
I said floppy disks.
Yeah, we are talking about the floppy disk era. Like, granted, online distribution was part of the model. Like, believe me, there were many a BBS you could go to get, say the first episode of Wolfenstein 3D. Or the first episode of Doom. Hell, you could get that shit in buying a controller. That was kind of the idea. That's the share in the shareware.
But what they mean by share as opposed to freeware, which is games that people gave away for free. Shareware was games that generally they gave away discs or later CDs, and when it was CDs, there was usually a bunch of games on one disc, where you got like the first chunk. It's basically what we do with demos nowadays.
Yeah.
Where you get the first chunk of a game for free usually, and then once you get to a certain part, you just get a thing that said, if you liked this, you can send money to a self-addressed stamped envelope or something to such and such an address, and we'll send you a floppy disk with the rest of the game. Or some of the things they actually came with, like you could, once they had networks, you could actually download someone playing music on the thing. Eddie?
What?
I don't think that was part of the show, right?
Supposed to be.
Well, he opened up Unreal Gold. Like, don't remember that theme song. Like,
Oh,
Well, I
yeah,
thought
Unreal
I
Gold.
switched back to normal.
it's
Whoops.
okay. Once again, the chances of running a live broadcast.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Anyway, shareware. It has some kind of mechanism where you can send them money and you get the full copy of the game.
Right. And Epic Mega Games, they were both pioneers of shareware and sort of freeware. Their very first release was a game called ZZT. And ZZT had a level creator where you could create various ZZT games in it, and very big in very big in the what was the online distribution segment of the time. Not just like BBS's, but a lot of those shareware discs you mentioned, they would have ZZT files, games that were created in this game. Not the first game to do this, like Pinball Constructor Sets. Maybe the progenitor of all this. Definitely also remember like Pinball Construction Set tables being on these kind of discs as well. But in terms of shareware, the names you probably know are Jazz Jackrabbit, Jill of the Jungle. There's a whole bunch of these. Like, got to keep in mind, back in the 90s, it was not necessarily easier to make a game, but you didn't need as many resources to make a game that you needed, like, even at the end of the 90s. We are talking about games that are 2D platformers. Pretty advanced 2D platformers, especially for the PC. In fact, like Jazz Jackrabbit was, it's one of those games that was created as a response to not having a whole lot of good computer platformers on the PC at the time. I mean, we are talking post Commander Keen, so they knew how to get scrolling down, and in fact, I'm being serious.
It's a bigger deal than you might think.
Like, oh yeah, like if you actually like read up on Commander Keen and the technical wizardry behind it, like getting smooth scrolling to work on a PC was quite the technical feat.
True.
The thing you got to understand about the NES is kind of built with scrolling in mind. And like the PCs, like IBM compatibles, they weren't the only computers that had this kind of problem. Pretty much all of like the 8-bit computers couldn't do smooth scrolling. The MSX couldn't do smooth scrolling until like the latter days of the MSX2. Really, the only computer I can think of that really did scrolling well was the Amiga. And the Amiga really wasn't a big deal over here. Like, Europe's a different story. But point is, Epic Mega Games, they were called Epic Mega Games in the 90s because I want to say just the 90s, because that's the kind of company name that would emerge from the 90s. But it's also, apparently, it was a way of making a small company appear big. Like, and I guess this worked. They didn't change the name until like Unreal 2. Like they stuck with it for a while.
And I mean, Epic Games is still kind of a look how big we are name.
Well, Epic Game is kind of an artifact, but it's less obnoxiously 90s than epic mega games. Like that just screams 80s extreme. But yeah, moving out of the shareware era, like the game that if you know Epic Games from the past, it's probably the Unreal series. Yeah, and I owned the original Unreal back in the day. Like I bought it in 1998. And I enjoyed it quite a lot. Like maybe not as much as say Duke Nukem 3D, but still, groundbreaking game for its time. It is the progenitor. This is where we get the Unreal Engine. And it is the first game that uses the Unreal Engine. It's not like, there was this obscure game that came out 6 months before that technically used the Unreal Engine first.
And it's Unreal Tournament, right?
No, Unreal. Just Unreal. The game that Petty is playing right now, this is Unreal. This is the first Unreal. That's another thing that gets forgotten. Unreal did not start out as an arena fighter. It's probably best known as an arena fighter franchise. Definitely found more success in that vein than your more traditional single player FPS. But it went Unreal, then Unreal Tournament. Mind you, never played Unreal Tournament. Like honestly, arena fighters were not my thing. But clearly Unreal Tournament was a lot of people's thing, culminating with Unreal Tournament 2004.
With vehicles and stuff. Oh my god, that was the
Yes. Yeah. I don't think many people played Unreal Tournament 3. And yes, there was an Unreal Tournament 3. The numbering is weird because Unreal Tournament 3 wasn't Unreal Tournament 3. It was like Unreal Tournament 2003, Unreal Tournament 2004. Then they went back to traditional numbering, but this is not the only series that has this kind of chronological confusion. But just look at say the Resident Evil series. It's like I wish I did have more to say about Unreal Tournament. Played a lot of Unreal, not so much the tournament branch. Did avoid Unreal 2. I remember not hearing too much in the way of good things about that game. Also worth noting with the Unreal franchise, not completely developed by Epic Games. In fact, from the very first game, this was a co-production between Epic Games and a company called Digital Extremes. Now, if you haven't heard that name, they're the people who do Warface, or I think that's how that's pronounced. And Dark Sector. Warface is one of the bigger games as service entities out there right now.
Do you mean Warface?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I might be confusing games here.
I hope you're not talking about Warframe.
Warframe, there we go.
Right. Okay, makes more sense.
Yeah, I'm no, I'm
Please
thinking
excuse us. Adam is bad with names.
No problem.
Yeah, no, Warface is a different online game.
There are too many war games.
Warface is a Crytek first-person shooter. Anyway, Warframe is the Digital Extremes free-to-play third-person robot game, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Cyber Ninja game, something like that.
Yeah. You know, and yeah, this this is where they got their start.
Okay. That's
yeah.
interesting. I'm learning tons of stuff tonight. Thanks, guys.
Yes. You know. Anyway, yeah. So going into the 2000s, this is when we see the shift. This is when we see a shift from Unreal to consoles. Not starting with Gears of War. They shifted Unreal over to consoles a bit there.
Yeah, there was Unreal for the PS or the Xbox. I tried to play, but it wouldn't let me.
Unreal Championship 1 and 2. And also, believe it or not, Unreal Tournament 3. See, it kind of gets forgotten about, I suppose even more so than Unreal Tournament 3 in general. But Unreal Tournament 3's lead platform was the PlayStation 3. And that caused all sorts of consternation because, so if you know PC gaming, if you know Unreal Tournaments at all, mods, big part of that scene. And there was a lot of venom spewed towards the idea of playing an Unreal Tournament game without mods. I think there was like an attempt to do that didn't really work. Like, I don't know, it's been a long time and obviously it didn't really take. Indeed, like after the failure of Unreal Tournament 3, the series just kind of faded away for a good deal of time. And this is also mid 2000s. This is when Epic Games shifts over to console development. Still supporting the PC at points, but their big thing during this time is obviously Gears of War. I'm going to assume everyone here has at least heard of Gears of War at some point.
I've played the first two.
Yeah. Not necessarily played it if you've never had an Xbox, but also coming around this time is some acquisitions. They acquired for a time People Can Fly. If you don't know who they are the developers of the Painkiller series, among others. And they did work in various capacities for Epic Games. Like they did the PC port of the first Gears of War game, and they were the lead development on Gears of War Judgment, and they even did like some work on Fortnite. At least Fortnite, like the original version of Fortnite. We'll get into that in a bit, and as well as Chair Entertainment. They are the developers of Shadow Complex. And Chair Entertainment's kind of important because they're the facilitators of the next stage of Epic Games, and that's mobile development. They were the developers behind the Infinity Blade series. Now, once again, Infinity Blades kind of faded to the mists of time, but if you remember, like about 10 years ago, and if you had a phone, you might have had Infinity Blade, at least like an iOS device. I don't know if it ever came to Android. But,
I don't think it officially did, but some knockoffs did.
I just remember Infinity Blade being like the biggest deal at the time because look at these graphics on a phone. Even though, the graphics were impressive, but it's because, it's on rails. They did have to do some trickery to get the graphics to look that good on mobile phones at the time. I mean, I'm pretty sure you could do a more open world Infinity Blade these days and have it look, even better since we are talking about Unreal Engine 3. That went on for, all these projects went on for a while. They opened and closed some studios. that really didn't do anything. Titan Studios, Impossible Studios, never really did anything. Anyway, Next Shift comes in 2010. This is where the Tencent acquisition comes into play, or the Tencent investment is a more accurate thing to say, because Epic Games is only 40% owned by Tencent.
Which is still,
That's
a lot for 10 cents.
Yeah, but it's not majority control.
Just large
means
minority.
It means that Tencent probably if they want to, they have a say, and I think that they can appoint people to the Epic Games board. But from what I understand, Tencent is actually fairly hands off with their acquired and invested. This is just what I've heard. I can't confirm that. So if you know what Tencent is traditionally invested in, that means games as a service in one capacity or another. That being said, they didn't really have that in 2012. What they had was Fortnite, but I think a thing that gets forgotten about is Fortnite was kind of a hot mess for the majority of its development, or rather, the Fortnite you don't remember. The thing that is
Fortnite
called,
was originally intended to be a mostly single-player game. Then they they threw in a battle royale mode.
Well, here's the thing: it was supposed to be online co-op, but more like Left 4 Dead. Focusing on 4-player co-op, and it was a zombie survival castle building thing.
Yeah.
And that was and they had that in development for at least 6 years. I say at least because the initial version of Fortnite Save the World got released in 2017, and nobody gave a shit. And there's a lot of reasons why it's overdeveloped. It's got every fucking free to play, or at least it did have everything free to play, and there's just so many systems. It's just looking back on the 2017 version of this, and it's no surprise it didn't take off. And in a extreme reversal, Fortnite Battle Royale. Do you know how long this thing took to develop?
Not long. It's basically chucking the stuff that they already had into another. So the netcode might have taken a while.
2 months.
Damn.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Longer than Vitrix. Shorter than Vitrix, sorry.
2 months. At least the initial version, because the thing you have to remember about Fortnite is it doesn't stay the same. It's this. It's doing this episodic television model.
But it got to good enough to function much faster.
Right. Well, it was basically like that out of the box. And then, Fortnite took over the fucking universe. Once again, not surprising, because it managed to take the Battle Royale gameplay and make it more marketable and palatable to underage, teenagers. Obviously Fortnite is really big with teenagers and the young people and all that stuff. And that's not to say that PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds wasn't necessarily popular with that set either. Every fucking teenager managed to play an M-rated game at some point, because parents by and large didn't care.
Well, especially when they're free to play.
Right. The thing is, that is the other thing. Fortnite Battle Royale is free to play. PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, at least the the console and PC version, that actually cost $20. I think you can see the difference there right away. You know, it's
That
also
and it also just has a significantly more like kid-friendly aesthetic, honestly.
well, yeah, that's because it has an actual aesthetic. Like
That's
players
true,
on
yeah, as opposed to like generic asset store.
yeah, like
Yep.
PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds has maybe a few iconic things like the guy in the white shirt and the certain pose, but battle players. God, that title.
Mhm.
PUBG.
Yeah, PUBG. Thank you. Um, is pretty generic in its art style. Like even today,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, Epic continues to build out not just the popular stuff that we've talked about, but they've also been buying some stuff for the Unreal Engine, and not just like gearing up for Unreal Engine 5. They've bought things like Cloud. God, it's one of these quirky names that's a pun. Cloud Engine,
Mhm.
CloudGen. I
Oh,
think
they
it's
bought they bought Pun.
yeah. They bought CloudGen.
Oh, didn't know that.
Like I said, they've been making a lot of purchases in this vein in order to bolster various aspects of the Unreal Engine. Trying to remember some of the other stuff that they bought, like Cubic Motion, which is facial animation, Agog Labs, game scripting engines, 3D lateral, motion capture digitization. Um, see, this is the kind of thing. These are the kinds of things that they're trying to make. They're trying to make Unreal Engine not just the best engine for game development, but Unreal Engine has been moving outward into television and movie production. At least television production. Uh, if you don't know or you don't remember, The Mandalorian was built in Unreal Engine.
Yeah, and they have the epic sets that they
Uh-huh.
with instead of the green screen, they have like a real the real world behind.
Yeah.
That's insane, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. And they also bought Quixel, which is a photogrammetry studio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, they're making a lot of moves so that Epic Games, the Epic Unreal Engine is in new spaces because, well, their competition's doing the same thing. Unity is in a lot of non-gaming capacities, not just like television productions, but a lot of service industry like cars. Like I think like Unity is being used in dashboards and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and even sometimes to create professional softwares.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on, with Epic Games and indeed Unity, which is going to be really interesting to watch in the future. And Epic Games is still making games that are not Fortnite, believe it or not. They have, they just released what was it, Battle Breakers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is another game from Chair Entertainment, or the team that was Chair Entertainment. And they're doing an upcoming mobile game called Spy Jinx, which is being done with Bad Robot, or is it Sad Robot? Like the
I think it's
JJ,
bad.
yeah, the JJ Abrams production company. And that's been in development for like ages. And I don't think we still have a firm grip on what it's supposed to be. But anyway, so yeah, that's a condensed version of the history of Epic Games. There's a lot more. There's a lot we skipped over because, like I said, they just churned out a whole bunch of games in the 90s, like Epic Pinball, for example. That was its whole thing that was pretty big. One of the better 1990s pinball games, if I'm being honest. But anyway, so yeah, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Let's see, the week ahead. Right, so we do have a Friday show. And coming up on Friday, July 10th, we will be having Nathan Hamley of Sick Chicken. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll be talking about Guard Duty, the adventure game that they put out. And I think we covered last year. So, and coming up on the Sunday game reviews, we will have reviews of Summer and Mara, Gambare Super Strikers, and Pity Pit. So, until Friday, I shall wish you good gaming.